So,
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's class, which is going to be about pre-listing and listing presentations, and we're actually going to talk about writing the contract. So what we're going to do first is look at the PowerPoint for pre-listing, and I brought Stacy's book, which everyone should have a copy of. If you don't, send me an email and I'll get it to you. But chapter 4 in Stacy's book talks about pre-listing. And we're going to go over that first. And this would mostly apply, I shouldn't say mostly, but it sometimes can apply to someone who emails you first day of the year and says, I'm thinking of listing my house in April. So you're doing some pre-listing work with them. You're giving them a rough idea of what the comps have been like. You're giving them an idea of what's on the market and helping them that way. So again, use the reference of chapter 4 in Stacy's book, which talks about pre-listing, and that if you go into Jostle in the library in presentations, there is a pre-listing presentation in there, and I think it may be in the PowerPoint as well that we allude to. So let's look at the PowerPoint first. Pre-listing. As a lion is always ready. Are you? We've talked about this before. If you are new and starting out, at least look in the presentations folder in Jostle and look at the listing and pre-listing presentation that Stacy has put together. Have those things ready so that when the call comes someday, you at least have that to start off with, and then you can customize and change it and add to it as you go and learn more. A lion adds value, do you? So it's not only adding value, but how do you differentiate yourself from every other agent by doing something different? Yesterday we talked about LAER3D.com, and LAER3D.com is a wonderful thing to have as part of your listing presentation, because when you show the Matterport, the interactive floor plan, it almost speaks for itself, and you almost could just have them sign the paperwork right then and there, because it's so beautiful, and you're saying to them, this is the marketing that I am going to do for you, and they're all excited about it. Inspection. A lion seeks knowledge. Will you? So we're going to talk about pre-inspection in a minute. The first thing we're going to talk about is the pre-listing interview, which I just gave you a copy of, which is right here. Realtors control the process and the sellers control the decision. So in the pre-listing interview, what are you doing? You're listening. You're asking them information, knowledge, the property, the reason they're selling, what is your urgency, tell me about the house. And as we talked about yesterday, I always say, let's do a tour first and then we'll sit down, because the tour gives you an idea of what is the house like? What is the shape of the house? Did you go into the basement and the furnace is from 1949? You might not stand there and go, oh my goodness, but you've got that in your head. What types of personalities? We've talked about this even last week. We've talked about profiling the personalities. And that's really not a bad thing. I don't mean it in a bad way. But you're going to speak differently to someone who has owned and listed and sold 10 houses than you would to someone who's going through this process for the first time. You know, do you have to go back to the first day of school, or can you just skip to the end and do it very quickly because they understand everything? What types of personalities? Who is in charge? Lots of times you have to get an understanding about that. A lot of times, if it's a man and a woman, the woman is the decision maker, and he just sits there and says, I'll sign wherever you say. On the other hand, it could be reversed, or it could be two equal partners. It could be two co-workers that own it. So is there a personality type of dominant, influential, compliant, or steady? Now, if you get a compliant person, you might be pulling information out of them. that might be a little bit more difficult. The other important thing about this is make sure before you go to the meeting at all, you're asking if every, not important person, if every person that needs to be involved is going to be there. So if there are 2 names on the deed, you're going to pick a time of day when both people that are on the deed can be there. Otherwise, you're doing your whole presentation and then you might have to repeat it for somebody else. So that's kind of silly. One of the easy ways to do that, of course, is pulling public records. Dominant, powerful energy, direct communicator, very decisive, time and task oriented, natural leader. Remember when you're dealing with somebody like that, it kind of sets the stage for how you're going to communicate with that person. That person may say, I want the response every single time there's a showing. And yesterday we talked about showing time, which is awesome. Showing time response would fit right into that dominant personality because it would be constantly giving them information. An influential personality, enjoys the spotlight, likes to be liked, life of the party, warm and honest. So they may just be more laid back and enjoying the process of doing all of it. Compliant, loves analysis, sticks to the rules, often a perfectionist, reads the terms and conditions. So that's going to be your person that reads every single document that you give them. So again, that's part of your understanding of explanation, and we'll go through that when we get to the contract, is if they ask you a question about the contract, are you ready to be able to answer that? And the last one is steady and stable. Loyal team member, focus on community, likes to research, calm and caring energy, natural supporter. So you may have one member of the team that's one personality and one that's another, and you're like, okay, let's try to figure all of this out. So what should you have in a pre-listing packet? You should have background information about LAER. Again, in the listing presentation, it talks a lot about the company, but I go back to the reference of this book. In chapter 1, it talks about being a full service agent and the fact that we are a full service company. You do represent a company, and that's a big deal, a big positive deal to be part of your listing presentation is what are we all about? And in one of the other chapters of the book, it talks about the team, the entire team that we have working for you. So think about those things and have those ready. And you can actually give your seller a copy of this book as well. Your bio sheet, really important. You should, on a whole other subject, you should have your current bio on LinkedIn because a lot of people are looking on LinkedIn now to see if your bio is even there and if it's updated. Resume of sold homes in the last year. Testimonials. What is your listing process? What is your plan for marketing on week 1, 2, 3, and 4? You need to help them along because you may understand what you're going to do, but you need to express it to them. What are you doing in social media? What are you doing in marketing to the neighborhood? Broker's open house, regular open house, any of that. Market statistics, which you can get from MLS, from Boston Logic, to show to them days on the market and things that have happened in the last 6 months in their neighborhood. Brochure samples. So if you have a house that you have sold before and you did a brochure on it, bring those. Bring the things that you've just recently done as samples to show them of how their house would look. Another thing you could do, and you can do brochures in improv.net, which we talked about yesterday, you could go drive by their house the day before your appointment, take a picture of the front of the house, and make up a half put together brochure. And when you come to the listing presentation with that brochure in your hand with their picture already in it, they're going to be like, oh, this is what it's going to look like. So why not do that? And then blank sample copies of listing docs. I might take that a step further, as Stephanie had been asking us, if you're going to do your documents in dot loop, print them out and take them with you. I mean, if it's a one-step process and they're ready to sign, don't belabor it and make it a two-step process if you don't need to. Adding more value. Send a pre-listing gift. Send a thank you afterwards. There was somebody in our company that sent a bouquet of flowers. They were interviewing 3 different agents, and she sent flowers maybe on the day she was going. And then 2 hours later, there was another broker there from another company. She says, "Oh, where did you get those beautiful flowers?" And they said, "Oh, from the agent that was just here." Who does that? Are you setting yourself apart? One of the leaders of one of the top teams in our company, when she does a 2-step process, when she leaves the house, she goes out to her car. She has the thank you notes right on her front seat. She writes the thank you note. "Thank you for allowing me to tour your home and visit with you. I hope to give your home the thorough marketing that your home deserves." And she stops right at the post office and puts that in the mail that night as she's leaving the listing. There's a lot to be said for those little things. So again, I mentioned Secret 4. Chapter 4 in this book. So what we're going to talk about is how you're going to speak to your sellers and what are you going to suggest to them. Chapter 4 is a unique chapter. Has everybody read that?
I don't have it.
You don't have this book? You can take this home. Chapter 4 is about a pre-listing home inspection. Remind me, tomorrow we have a gentleman coming from RJ Inspections, and I would love to get his take on that. So there's a lot of advantages to doing a pre-listing home inspection, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. With a pre-listing home inspection, this is when your seller, and again, we've talked about Martha and Henry who have lived in their house for 24 years or 44 years. They may not have any idea that there's something wrong with the electrical or the plumbing or their furnace. Maybe they've never had it serviced in all the years they've lived there. I mean, who knows? By doing a pre-listing home inspection, it's a progressive way for them to get an understanding of their home before they put it on the market. If, for instance, there's something little, not to really say little, but let's say there's a problem in the circuit breaker box, which could be corrected by a $300 repair. They could get that corrected, so that then is off the table for it being a home inspection issue. So for somebody who's owned their home for a long time, what this does is brings the issues to the forefront, makes the seller more aware of the condition of their home, so that when the inspection comes from the buyer, they're not blindsided and say, "I had no idea that," whatever. Yes?
That just happened to my grandfather.
Yeah.
He listed the home, got someone that was interested. They wanted to do an inspection. Septic failed. The whole septic system failed. And I told him too, I was like, "Well, you should have went with one of our agents who would have done a pre-listing
Good.
inspection, and you could have got that fixed." And
So again, there's one of your questions. If they have a private septic system, I would say, when was the last time you had it inspected? I had a listing years ago in Billerica. I don't think the lady had it pumped in 20 years before we listed it. It was, I mean, I don't know what's wrong with people, but, so then, well, anyway.
I did one of those last night, those pre-listings.
Did you?
Yeah, inspection pre. Yeah.
How did the sellers take it?
It was actually an old friend of mine.
Yeah.
So it was pretty good. We shot the shit for a while, but he was good. No, he walked through the whole thing. It's pretty much his house is turnkey. So there was only a few little things.
Not many surprises.
Not many surprises.
Yeah.
But he wanted to walk through the whole thing with me and ask me questions about what I thought about. Do I need to do this or do that? And,
Interesting.
yeah.
Part of the result of the pre-listing or home inspection is the buyers could say, "You've already done it. I don't need to spend $500 having my own done." Mm-hmm. On the other hand, they could say, "No, I want my own guy to do it as well." We'll ask the inspector tomorrow, but it's not to say that it's subjective. but what one home inspector might bring up as an issue might be a different level of issue with another home inspector. You know, the way they write it up or something like that. But it just could make the process go a lot easier. I mean, you're going to have sellers that say, well, why would I do that? Remember that when you're talking to your seller, who are you representing? You're representing them. So if you can help them to be better prepared before the listing happens and relieve that anxiety, which is talked about in Chapter 4, from the time the offer is accepted to the time that the home inspection is done and they bring back questions and concerns, yahoo for that.
What's your opinion on, one of his questions was painting. And he went and did all his bedrooms, but the living room, you know, once you start there, it goes on down the hallway and everything else, so, and it wasn't bad. But I said, Gary, I don't think you need to repaint this. You know, the house is beautiful the way, I mean, people might come in and want their own color.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know how to
I'm
do it.
very conservative, and that's why I think the tour before you even sit down is really important. I would totally agree with that, especially because I'm not 20, and a person who's buying it who's 25 might have a whole different opinion than me.
It's gonna cost them a couple
Kind of,
grand
if it
to
ain't
do
broke,
it.
don't fix it. Right. You might go in and say, well, I'll do the whole thing in this pale gray because that's the new color, and
Right.
they may want bold colors.
Well, I told him pale gray too.
Yeah, so why?
If he was gonna do it.
You
but-
know, we used the example last week, and I've seen it recently on Property Brothers, where, remember, Martha and Henry had their kitchen redone in 1975, so they have a new kitchen, right? But when they were about to list the house this past fall, they put granite in. Okay, we upgraded it to something modern, but it's still the 1975 cabinets. I'm like, why bother?
Yeah.
Why bother?
He had the old cabinets too, but they were in beautiful condition.
Yeah,
But he said, I go, just leave them, Gary.
just leave it.
I mean, they're
Yeah.
nice condition. Obviously, they're up. They need to be
And-
updated. But
Everyone's into painting their cabinets too.
Yes.
Lots of
If it's solid wood cabinets and you can do
Yeah.
something with them, and then put your own granite or quartz. I mean, a lot of people are getting away from granite and doing the more solid surfaces, or even the concrete counters people are doing as well. But I'm like that too. Now, another conversation you can have is, let's say your carpet is very worn in the hallway upstairs in the bedroom or something like that. That could be a conversation you have with the seller. But I wouldn't go so far in the listing as saying, we're going to give you $1,000 carpet credit, because you're acknowledging up front that there's a problem. Wait until the home inspection, because what one person sees as an important objection in a home inspection, another person might not.
right.
Somebody else might say, and we talked about this last week, I can't wait to pull that carpet up because we already know there's hardwood underneath it, yahoo. So
Mhm.
why give the credit for the carpet when they're just going to rip it up and throw it out anyway? So I would be careful about that, and I am very conservative. You know, you're going to have stagers and other people who might go in and say, oh, you must do this and you must do that. I think in preparing the house, and that's a whole other PowerPoint and class, it's more about decluttering the house, depersonalizing it, getting as much stuff out into a pod or whatever as you can, and having things like closets be half empty. People have to walk in and imagine your stuff out and their stuff in. So that's a more important issue. And the walkability. Take that one extra wing chair out of the living room, so when the buyer and the buyer agents are walking through, or one extra piece of furniture in a bedroom that's making it look cluttered, those types of things. But the other thing about doing a major renovation at the time that you're listing a house is, you're never going to get the value back out if you do it within a year of selling your house.
Yeah.
You have to do it for your own enjoyment and live there for a while.
Right.
So that's another part of it. I guess we're done with this. This is Stacy's quote all the time. Everyone says you can't until you do. Then everyone wants the key to your success, and you say the key is I don't listen to everyone. So this whole issue, and we'll go over it again tomorrow with the home inspector. This whole issue of doing the pre-inspection can help your negotiating, can help the entire process go smoother. It's just something to think about. Not everyone is going to accept it. I've had 2 people do it. So it's worth bringing up to them, because if they don't have an understanding, if they've just existed in the home and not done much maintenance for one reason or another, it might be worth doing. Because if you can eliminate a couple of those concerns from being in the home inspection, yahoo for that. Rather than, so let's go back to that issue. Let's say that electrical issue was a $300 fix. If you didn't fix that, when they come back with the home inspection, they're going to say, all right, we want $5,000 off the offer because the electrical needs to be done. So $5,000 versus $300, where you had control of what the repair was and you did it for a minimal cost. So again, in Jostle, in training, in Jostle, in presentations. No, it's in training. All the presentations are there, and there is a pre-listing presentation. So again, if somebody calls you January 1st and says, I'm thinking of listing my house in April, you can send them the interview, asking them questions about the house. You can send them the pre-listing presentation that we have put together. It's all there for you. So let's go on to the actual listing presentation. How many of you have looked at the listing presentation that's in?
Me.
How am I doing this?
I'm staying up too late. I'm reading too much. Oh my god. Keep reading everything you're reading.
What do you want me to do?
You have a little baby. You stay up late. Like
This
if
thing?
David goes to bed, you stay up.
No.
I used to do that.
Honestly, how it is
Because I'm a night
fine.
owl.
What?
How, like, that layout was fine. How you did it last time.
I know, but I'm clicking on it. It's not coming
I
up.
wake up.
That's just the internet.
Just needed my alone time.
If you go up to the address bar,
Pages one.
where you like type in the website,
Yeah?
just you see the refresh button all the way over to the left.
Oh, those are back.
It's like a circle, an arrow going in a circle.
Briefly at, when you brought it to display.
This?
Yep.
A lot of
just
school
click that.
tuning.
Taylor.
Oh, cute.
We were planting sunflowers.
She's such a diva.
Okay. All right, so this is in Jostle. If you have nothing else prepared for a listing presentation, start with this. I know, Sarah, you're way beyond that. You've done customizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is a place to start. Remember chapter 1 in this book, which talks about the talks about the full service agent and the full service company. That's us. Now you can have this. And that's what this entire presentation is. What it means to hire a lion. So you have to go in with confidence. This doesn't have anything to do with I've sold one house in the last year or I've sold 50 houses. You have to go in with the confidence of representing yourself and representing the company that's behind you. That's the confidence, and that's what you want to be talking about, and that's what that first chapter talks about. We are number 1 in market share, agent productivity, brand name awareness, advertising, lead generation, professional education, and the minds of buyers and sellers. Our partnership. I wish to be your partner for all of your real estate needs. As your partner, I will spend time identifying your wants and needs while educating you. And that's a big part of it. You're going to customize what you're going to do for them based on listening to them in that pre-listing interview. And then you're also going to be advising them about what the solds are, what the market is like, all of that. If you are selling your home, I will work with you to put together a detailed marketing plan so that we can price properly and market to the right buyers. As a buyer, I will investigate communities and provide you with everything you need to make a great decision. My clients are like family, and our relationship will last long beyond the closing table. We talked about that yesterday too. So remember concierge. You could talk about that or have the concierge book and tell them, the concierge people, that's a great thing to talk about in the listing presentation, because we have movers, we have the pod people, we have a junk person, all because otherwise what are they doing? They're either Googling it or not going to the yellow pages anymore, but that type of thing where they're saying, oh my gosh, where do I begin to look for somebody to help me get my stuff out of the house and to prepare the house for looking great when you go in to take the listing pictures. So you want to have that stuff out there. So back that time frame up and get that pod in there so that they can start clearing the house out. And I always say, as you pack each box, take it out to the pod. One less thing that's in the house. Talk about that we have attorneys on staff. Talk about our partner mortgage company. All of the things that we have to help make the job easier. We have 450 experienced agents who are also going to keep your listing in mind. And we are protective of our territory, aggressive negotiators, and our brand is the king of the real estate jungle. So again, we are showing confidence. We have over 10,000 transactions closed. You could talk about how many offices we have. Because you still, once in a while, the people in the Plymouth office were saying LAER is new to that little end of the world right before you go over the bridge to the Cape. And so they've been having to tell what LAER is all about, and that we have 30 offices and that we're one of the largest residential real estate companies in New England.
Yeah, people around my area don't really know them either. Melrose Wakefield's always been Remax, Century 21. They're like, where's the office? I'm like, ooh, it's way far away in Winchester.
So another question is, why work with a realtor? And this is why Stacy feels strongly that we should all be realtors. And then talk about the fiduciary responsibility. I mean, people use the word realtor too generically when it is an important thing. That I've talked every single day that we've been here about code of ethics. When you work with a realtor, their fiduciary responsibility is to you. That means that you have an expert who is looking out for your best financial interests, an expert who contractually is bound to you in everything they do to protect you. That's big. The value of that commitment cannot be overstated. For more than 100 years, realtors have subscribed to the NAR strict code of ethics as a condition of membership. Realtors have the expertise and experience to help sellers protect their investment and help buyers build theirs. So that's another, confidence booster. Why work with a realtor? Know the rules. Complex, ever-changing real estate regulations. Buying and selling a home is not like purchasing a plane ticket. Every home is different. Laws change. We've talked about this in the last week about things to say and disclosures that need to be on there, and the investigation that you do with public records and with the field cards to understand what you're representing. And sometimes you have to explain all of that to them. Realtors are immersed in real estate. They must stay current with all the updates and regulations, laws, contracts, and practices. Once you retain a realtor, they put that knowledge to work for you. Helping find the right home beyond square footage and beds. Browsing online is a terrific way to start, but when it's time to buy, know all the pros and cons of the property can help you make the right decision. Realtors live and breathe real estate, and they can share information about a home that you wouldn't otherwise know. For example, they can tell you about the perils of whatever it is, piping, a plumbing material that's prone to bursting, or the concerns for a certain type of plywood or roofing material that can spontaneously combust at higher temperatures, like those in attics. Are you familiar with that? Your realtor can go beyond the aesthetics and tell you important details about homes you are considering. we're going to talk about that in a minute when we look at the listings as well. Pricing and selling a home. There are lots of sites where you can go to view price estimates, but you are taking a risk using them. In some markets, online estimates can be off by as much as 35%. So that's why we talked about the market stats when we had the appraiser come here, and rolling the appraiser's role into your speech as a listing agent to express to them how important it is that you're using the comps that are appropriate for that house, like style, number of bedrooms and baths, gross living area, even age of the house and the amount of land. To think like an appraiser and to explain to your listing client how important the appraiser's role is in this entire process. In the contracts and negotiations, finding the right home is a fun part, then the real work begins. So that's another part of your speech when you're at the listing. I'm not just here to do the paperwork and list you and you never see it. I'm going to follow you through the entire transaction. Chapter 1 in the book talks about the 4,600 minutes of time that it takes for us to follow the transaction through, and I handed that piece of paper out yesterday. Realtors can help you navigate the complex documents and craft an attractive offer that makes sense to you. Plus, when it comes to negotiations, your realtor is your advocate and can bring an objective voice to a very subjective situation. We talked about that as well. Following code of ethics. I mean, they just so that they understand, and what have I said every single day? To me, that's the icing on the cake over and above your license. It's what you're always thinking about. How am I conducting my business every day, and am I treating other people the way I want to be treated? So it's important that they understand. There's the list. All the things. I mean, sometimes this is a real eye-opener for a seller. All the parts of a transaction, all the minutes it takes between the marketing and the follow-up and preparing the open houses, just the initial marketing, getting the first marketing out when you're first putting the house on the market, and then helping them with negotiations. And Stacy talks about a doctor or a plumber will charge you per hour. We just charge you one flat fee no matter how little or how long it takes us to do it. Why choose me and my LAER team? When an inquiry comes into our office, into the office of your home, it goes directly to me. That's another important factor that they may not realize, that you as the listing agent get all of those calls. And since my team, since we are the most qualified to answer the questions for your potential buyer, so it's just not going anywhere to somebody that's on uptime. At some firms, those important inquiries go to any agent that answers the phone, resulting in serious or several concerns. How qualified is that agent? Does that agent know the property? You will never have these concerns at LAER. We control the destiny. This property transaction is controlled by you and me. At other firms, the manager decides where the property will be marketed and how often it is showcased. At LAER, all decisions are made at the agent-client level. So that's, again, where you're differentiating yourself and offering a more individualized service. This is all about improv, which, again, if you can either make things or show things that you've done before, that's great to have with you. The LAER Marketing Center will keep your needs in mind. We have hundreds of print and multimedia products available, which we do. That site in itself is amazing. LAER 3D. If you show LAER 3D at a listing appointment, it's just amazing to see the professional floor plans. He will do drone. He will do twilight and sunrise pictures. Whatever you think your home needs. And then it talks about all the places that we syndicate to. I mean, again, if somebody's lived in a house a long time, they may not be aware that all of this is out there now with social media marketing and everything else. And again, the social media marketing is not a once and done thing. You're going to do social media marketing in advance of an open house. They need to understand that. We have the LAER app, which can bring people to your house as well. We talk about community. Again, when you're representing LAER to somebody who says, well, what's LAER? Talk about our partnership with the Greg Hill Foundation and that we are community oriented, that we're more than just a real estate company, but we are about giving back to the community and the community things that we've done. I mean, this year the Greg Hill Foundation is a huge incentive that we're participating in.
And I have a question.
Sure.
For the social media marketing, I know LAER, Facebook page, do they ever post open houses for the agents on that page? Because LAER has so many followers.
On the LAER,
For like an event, like post an event on the LAER, anybody who's following LAER.
an event or an open house?
An event in the form of an open house. Like post as an event for the
Joe?
page, that's an open house.
I have not seen the open houses being posted on the regular LAER real
Okay,
estate
so it's agent
site.
level.
It is the agent level, yeah.
Okay.
Currently, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's going to change or not.
But keep that question in mind. Joe is helping with that. Remember also, and I don't need to say that to you, but that you need to be posting to your Facebook page and then sharing it from your Facebook page to your personal page if you do. With Improv, if you create a flyer, you can do your posting to Facebook and Twitter right from Improv. It's a very inclusive program. LAER University, it talks about the training that we have so that they understand that you're prepared and a knowledgeable professional to do everything for you. RPR, we talked about. Loop, MA Pass, we talked about showing time yesterday. Showing time is going to be a big part of your listing presentation to give your seller the confidence in knowing that when someone shows their home, the home is secure, that you're going to know who has shown it. One of the things that I do, we talked yesterday about you getting the request on your iPhone. When I get the request on my iPhone, I call the agent and I say, thank you for making an appointment to show the house. If you have any questions about the home while you're there touring it, feel free to call me. I don't know, do you know of any other agents that do that? I mean, that's a great thing to do. They're like, wow, you even care that I'm going there, you know. So I think that's a nice thing to follow up with. 5 steps to pricing it right. There's a fair amount of psychology and strategy that goes into determining the home's price. We will closely work with you to determine the price range based on the analysis of all the properties. We talked a lot about this yesterday. I won't go into that again. But the appraiser is a huge, huge part. And I said this yesterday. It's not what the seller thinks or what I think. It's getting them to the point of understanding how the appraiser is going to come up with their price. And you want them to get that psychology in place at the time of the listing so that they're not fretting from the time of the accepted offer to the time the appraisal comes in, holding their breath to say, oh, jeepers, did I price it right? Or we do, whatever. Stacy talks in her How to Hire a Lion book about appealing to the herd mentality, which means don't get creative with the price. Don't do $562,358. Do a regular price, because sometimes people will perceive that as you're an eccentric seller or something. But put it out there at a regular price. By pricing your property on the lower end of the value range, it's possible to stimulate interest among more than one buyer and create a larger response to it too. That's another thing. You can also use this slide in your listing presentation about marketing it where it should be, unless you have a difficult buyer that has their own mindset about what they think the market should be. Price for real estate searches. That's another thing. So are you pricing it at 300 on the dot, or are you pricing it at 298, or are you pricing it at 305? One of the conversations that you can have with your sellers is when people are out there looking, they may be looking in a $25,000 or $50,000 price range. If you price it at $1 over or above, are you going to lose that segment of the people? So that can happen as well. So you want to be careful about that.
Can I ask you, Susan, what you
Yep.
think about the price of $325 versus $329? Because I'm really trying to push my sellers to get to $325 because I think that's one of those cutoff price points. And I'm concerned that at $329 they miss people that have capped at $325.
So I would definitely show them that slide about,
did.
yeah.
Which is how I got them under $350.
Now you're just being greedy.
And is it listed yet?
It's not listed
It's
yet.
not listed yet.
It'll be listed next week, but I don't know. I'm just a little worried about that $4,000.
The only thing I
don't know
would
how much
say
of
is
a
if
difference
they're adamant on the 29, I would say we'll list it at your price. But if we don't get the response in the showings within 14 days,
Mhm.
we're making an agreement right now that we're going to have a conversation and do a price adjustment. So staying in communication is good for you and good for them, because you're saying to them, I'll give in to your $4,000 at the moment, but if it proves out,
Yeah.
and once again, the proof of the pudding and showing time is, if the buyers and the buyer agents come back and say, if it had been at 25 or 24, we might have written an offer, but at 29 it scared us. But showing time response, I would say, I have not had a problem with showing time. I would say 90% of the agents respond well. You know, a showing time will
Do
send.
you get those remarks in your emails, like in an email from
Mhm.
Showing Time,
Yep.
so you could actually
But
even
you
show
can
it to the
go.
buyer?
You can actually go in and do a report for the seller
Mhm.
and show all of the responses that have come, especially when you're ready to do
Yeah.
a price adjustment. Say, this
Yeah.
is what the buyers have been saying. It's not
Right.
me saying it, it's the buyers. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Because I've
Because
told
it's just,
people that, but this, like, whatever, because they don't see it.
Well, you can add them.
I
to-
did- I
Yeah,
did
you
do
gotta
Showing
put them
Time, it was
on-
just, yeah.
you have to put them on as
But
the
that-
homeowner.
but
But
that's
even
good.
if you don't, if they don't text or haven't, whatever, you can
Mm-hmm.
bring that to a price adjustment meeting and say, these are the things. But
Right.
it's definitely better to put them on there. They can receive the request for showing and the response by either text or by email. So as long as they have one of the two. Again, don't get creative with the pricing. We talked about that. Having a contingency plan, and you talked about this, new construction is even harder. One of the things in the pre-listing interview is where are you going, how soon do you have to be there? You know, what is your urgency? And if it was to come in this wonderful spring market that you get 3 offers tomorrow and it's a guy that's transferring from Arizona and has to be in there in 30 days, would you have a place that you could go? That is sometimes a very difficult situation. I had a buyer who was buying new construction in Dracut last year, and he was able to go into a relative's house who had quite a bit of extra space. It just worked out. But you might have some information on those long-term placement things, you know, I forget the names of them, but just have some on hand and say, if,
Oh, like the Marriott.
yeah,
Extended
the
stay.
extended stay places, yeah. On the other hand, especially this time of year, somebody might write in their listing, I prefer an end of June closing because I want my kids to finish the school year out. So that might work, but you're being honest ahead of time. So, you know, have that conversation at least so that they can be thinking, if I get a really good offer and the timing isn't good, am I going to throw that offer away? Or can I think of a place to go? And that's when your concierge people come in. So you've got the pod, you've got the mover, you've got the junk person. If you're going to go to a temporary place, if you've got those partnerships with the people at concierge, that can help make that whole thing smoother.
My mother's got plenty of extra rooms. Mom, guess what? You're gonna be a boarding house.
Yeah, there you go.
You won't sell your house well, will you?
There you go.
So ongoing discussion, again, tells them that you're always there to keep the communication going. And that's another thing that you can do when you have a listing ongoing. We had an agent years ago that I worked with. Monday nights, he had office hours from 5 to 7. And so his listing, well, I guess any client, knew that he was there in his office to either call or to come and visit. And that was his catch-up time once a week to communicate with everybody. Not that he didn't talk to them other times, but they always knew faithfully that he was there Monday night from 5 to 7. So keep that communication going. How are things going? What happens with expireds lots of times? They'll say, oh, once I listed the house, I never heard from my agent. You know, you don't want that to happen. And this talks about keeping the communication going. Questions to ask agents. So if they want to reverse interview you, that's why that book is helpful, to have some answers ready. How many homes does your agency sell a year? That's a great one, because when I meet with new agents and they're like, ooh, how am I going to do this because I haven't sold a home yet? Say how many homes your agency has sold, your company has sold. How many of you sold it? How many has LAER sold in each community? That's what it's about. It doesn't have to be about you personally. Market share, how many offices do we have, how are the calls handled, all those types of questions. Be prepared. And our commitment to you. Again, you want to always be differentiating yourself, giving over and above whatever a regular agent might be doing. So with that said, we are going to go into talking about the contracts and just review the differences between a single family and a condo. Just to note the differences. Again, we're going to use my house. So going back, let's do remember dot loop it. I'm sorry we didn't get to go over that, but you will be getting some videos that we've just put together. In dot loop, we have just streamlined everything, and there will be documents in your loop that are required, which is what we're going over right now, and then there will be additional documents. So the very first one, which we went over last week, was your agency document. If you keep going back, I think all the documents are there, yeah. We're going to do the contract last. But in the agency, remember, if you're doing a listing, you're going to be the seller's agent. But always remember that we are a designated agency company. And remember, as Stephanie asked the other day, you can be filling all of this out ahead of time in dot loop. The most important thing in dot loop, and we're going to share these videos shortly, the most important thing when you're creating a loop is to put the full detail information about your sellers, both husband and wife, 2 partners, 2 co-workers, what grandmother, grandson, whatever they are, their name, address, telephone number, email. They both have to have emails. If you don't have an email for the second person, there is a workaround for that. But if you put all of that information and the details up front, then you can auto-populate all of these documents and make your life 10 times easier, okay? So when they go to sign, you're going to fill in the bottom with your signature. Then when they go to sign, I'm holding this up and not giving this to anybody to look at. Sorry about that, but we've already gone through this. Yeah. When they sign the bottom, when you click to have their signature in there, when they put their signature, the date is going to come up right next to their signature. So you don't need to put another date in there. And they're going to, printing their name will also automatically come up, and they're going to put that they are the seller. Okay? So the way I do it, it would be different if you're sending them all 4 documents. If you're sending all 4 documents for electronic signature, they're going to get them all at one time. If I was doing it personally, I would always give the agency disclosure first, just because that's the beginning of the statement. The second document is the lead paint, which we went over in great detail on Tuesday. Remember that they need to state whatever they're going to state, and they're going to have to fill out 1 box in each section at the beginning, and then you as the listing agent are going to say, agent has informed the seller of the seller's obligations under federal and state law for lead-based paint disclosure and notification, and is aware of his or her responsibility. And if a seller says that he has no knowledge of anything, The seller has to understand that a buyer still has a right to have the home tested if they want to. Remember that when you're putting this entire 10-page document will be a document in .loop. This entire 10-page document has to go as your paperclip, not just the signature page in your MLS thing. The whole thing has to go in there. Okay, so let's look at the contract, which you have in your book. And we'll talk about that for a minute. So let's take, we may not need to use this at the moment. We'll use this one when we're doing the filling MLS in. But remember I said at the very beginning, when you're first going to meet somebody, you want to ask who the people are who are important, meaning who's on the deed. It may just be one person. It may be two people. But you want to have them both signing everything if they're the responsible people that own the home.
Who else is on your deed?
Right. But, well, there was someone else, but he's passed away.
Great question
Yeah,
to debate me with
sorry.
Susan. Really?
The way the second line says hereby grant to. The way I always fill that out is I put my name, comma, LAER Realty Partners. That's what I always say. Then when you put, I think it's important, it says property described as, I would put the entire thing, meaning 49 Whipple Road, Billerica, Massachusetts, 01821. I just think it's important to have the full address on there. Oh, no, this isn't as bad as New Hampshire, which New Hampshire rules their entire life on counties. But you have to know what county you were recorded in. Of course, Billerica is Middlesex County, so that's easy. When you're doing this, you've already pulled the public record. So I don't have an example of public record here, but when you go down about halfway in the page of public record, that very first grouping that you see will be the most recent book and page, the most recent time that the property was transacted. That's the book and page that you want to put in here. And you're going to need to do that in the MLS listing, which we'll look at in a minute. But I think Sarah just did that. So if you turn to page 2 of your listing, that's where the book and page is.
It's with the tax information.
Now this whole first paragraph, I mean, I don't think I've ever really explained the whole thing. If you've done your listing presentation and everything else, they need to understand, even based on the agency disclosure, that you're representing them. You do sometimes need to understand the difference between a designated company and the fact that, and another company, the fact that you are representing them, not your entire company. But it's just soup to nuts explaining your representation of them. Lots of times, if I'm meeting with them personally, I will fill paragraph number 2 in last. Okay? So that's the listing price. Let's go to number 3, and I'm going to give you my opinion, but people can jump in. The thing that's important about listing period, and let's go back to what we just talked about in the listing presentation. If you were going to list a house on June 1st, and we're only at the middle of April, but just say that you're going to list a house 4 weeks out, I think what you want to do when you're meeting with them and touring the house and first sitting them is explain the timeline, because there's a lot that may have to happen. One of the other chapters in that book talks about getting the house ready. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. So it's cleaning up the yard, decluttering. This is the time of year when you're transitioning from winter clothes to spring clothes. Put those things in Rubbermaid boxes and put them out in the pod that you've rented. So backing up from the listing date to backing up to the professional pictures to backing up to the pod. Let's just use those 3 examples. So you want to say to them, look, we need to get your house showing ready. I always say the worst day of your life is the day we take the professional pictures, because everything has to look formal and clean. The rest of the time, you may still have to live there, but we want the pictures to look great in MLS. So in order to get ready for the date, and let's say we're going to do the pictures on May 15th, we have from now until May 15th to think about how you're going to get the house ready, to put away wedding pictures, to put away the winter coats that are taking up 90% of the closet, to put away toys that you might not use, or whatever it is. I used the example last week of a house I had in Carlisle that was full of artificial plants. It looked like a jungle. And I said, the guy had an attached 2-car garage. I said, just throw everything out there. And from Friday until Monday, they did it. Oh my God, they get an A+ for being obedient. I went in Monday, it looked like a whole different house.
Awesome.
It was amazing. But sometimes you have to lead them along, and you have to explain again about the walkability. Remember that the buyers and their clients are going to be walking through the house. If you just get rid of that one wing chair that's making the turn difficult, or that one extra dresser that's in the bed, whatever it is, if you can think about lightening up the load. And what's one of the biggest things? Kitchen counters. I mean, I don't care what you do with the stuff, but the day the pictures are taken, that place has to look clean, because you want the kitchen counters to look like, oh, I can't wait to work there. This is great space. You don't want it to be so cluttered that you can't even see that it's granite. So it's a lot for them to think about, and you want to help them. And LAER Concierge, those partnerships are great because they're there. The stager that we have will come out and do a free consultation with them to say the things that you might have said, but maybe they'll look at it in a different way if somebody else is saying it. Get rid of some of the plants, get rid of the pictures. If you have bookcases, get rid of 50% of the books so that people can imagine their books in there, or any kind of bookshelf things. When they open a closet door, have it be 50% empty, because you don't want the closet to look small and cluttered. You want them to say, oh, this works, I can get my stuff in here, that type of thing. So what other things do you feel is important when you're telling them to get a house ready?
I had a listing presentation a couple weeks ago, and they've clearly outgrown the house, so they had their 2 daughters sleeping in the family room downstairs. It's like one huge bedroom, but it was this gorgeous family room with a wood burning fire stove that was all done with like marble trim, and it was blocked by kids' toys and bookshelves and toy chests, and I was just like, okay, take out half the bookshelves that are in this whole room and make sure that fireplace is clean and clear. Like, I want nothing in a 2-foot radius of the whole fireplace, and take everything off. They had typically with downstairs in a split level, there's kind of like a railing around the whole thing, like that lip, covered in toys. I said, everything off.
Oh my gosh.
Everything off. I'm seeing it tomorrow, and I can't wait to. I hope they listen.
Yeah. That's all you can do is hope that they listen. Another point, and this is going forward to home inspection, and hopefully he'll hit on this tomorrow. You've got to, if they've got a cluttered basement with boxes and boxes of stuff, or Rubbermaid storage boxes, you've got to have access to the furnace and the hot water heater for when the home inspector comes. Mm-hmm. And if they've been just shoving stuff in the basement, one more reason for the pod. Remember that our partnership with the pod, I think it's a $199 for 4 weeks. But with the pod, they will put a clear rider on both sides of the pod with all of your branding and picture on it. So you get free advertising the whole time the pod is in their driveway. So use it. Give these in.
Did you ever buy it for your client? 'Cause some people
No,
just don't
but
want
cheap. I was
It's
thinking
$200. I'd spend $200.
That's
It
right.
Depends on the price of the
Well,
house.
you can. That's
Some
an
people
individual
like
decision.
keep spending money because they.
But that's a tax write-off. In Jostle, in training, in Jostle in the library, there's a word that says concierge, and I put a PDF in there for every single partner that we have, so that you have all their contact
Yeah, and put it in the
information.
brochure.
Susan, what, just kind of nothing to do with, the house that I looked at yesterday on public records showed it as a split. And it's actually a raised ranch. When you walk in the front, it's all level, ground level.
She talked about that yesterday, the
So,
appraiser.
yeah, so, and I did my comps on it, I did all splits, I didn't, before I even went to his house.
I would say you
But there's not
have,
that many raised ranches.
No.
So,
yeah, and I noticed in the new format of MLS, they put a lot more choices of styles of houses, which is gonna make life more confusing. But I wouldn't compare it to a ranch. I wouldn't compare it to a Gambrel, Garrison, or Colonial either.
I
I
just did
think
just
the
splits.
only way you can go is splits.
yeah. But he was telling me, going, oh, he goes, you have it down here as a split. And I said, well, it's on public and then I said, because Gary, when you come in, you go, and I'm like standing in the basement, I'm like, wait, there is no downstairs
This is-
here. We're on the
that's
first level here.
strange. Yeah, that's a difficult one. Remember also what the appraiser said on Friday? Because back to LAER 3D, I knew that the appraisers would love us to bring the floor plans, but she said, bring your CMA. Lots of times she would love to see, and in your case, that's gonna be an unusual one. I would bring the CMA and say, I know this is a raised ranch, not a split, but
There is, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go back and see if there are any other raised ranches that I could do a comp from, but
on the other
I
hand,
looked at the neighborhood, it was all,
see, the problem is the information in MLS is only as good as the agent that put the stuff in. I wouldn't be surprised if you get an agent who had a raised ranch sold comp for you and they listed it as a split, so you're not gonna see it as a raised ranch.
right.
And the only way you would know is looking at the picture.
I've had appraisers ask me to get comps.
I love that when if
Yeah.
they do, great. If they don't, find a way to get them in their
Because
hands.
a lot of the appraisers now, because of this new law, I don't know if it still is, even from around here. Like my mom was having her house redone because she was getting an equity line. This was like 5 or 6 years ago. And she said, oh, my daughter's a realtor. And she called me and she goes, can you get me any comps for this? Because she has like a modern contemporary 5-bedroom, 4.5-bath house that like there's hardly any in Wakefield. And so she's
all I
like,
would say
I don't
is-
know what to comp it against.
All
you
I
know?
would say is play nice with the appraisers. Whatever
Yeah.
they ask you to do, if you can make them
Yeah.
happy, it's gonna make your transaction go
My
smoother.
brother-in-law's an appraiser, so I
Yeah.
got it in good.
So back to number 3. The reason I was giving you that whole long talk about the timing is I would wait and put that in after I've talked to them about how are you going to prepare? When are we going to take the pictures? Because you don't want to go poof and make MLS live until you have the professional pictures in. So it can sometimes take some weeks ahead timing before you figure that out. Okay, so then the next question about the listing period is, how long do you list it for? I mean, even if you say 6 months, if you say 3 months now, it's most houses aren't even gonna last that, so it really doesn't matter.
I don't. Here would be my argument to that, and why if I ever have to justify my time period, is because if the first offer falls through, now that I had one,
Right.
and this is why I do it. It fell through 2 days before closing. Buyer just got cold feet, no financing contingency, nothing. They just walked away.
Wow.
I lost 2
all that time
months.
is wasted, yeah.
Yes.
So now, if I only had a 3-month or a 4-month long agreement,
Yeah.
I'm screwed, because now the property's hitting the market, and it shows days on market as 45
Right.
or 50 days.
Right.
So my marketing, of course, is
And
I'm
they
gonna
may-
have a challenge there,
And you may get asked, why did it fall through and all that jazz too.
which is
But-
fine because it's easy to justify. I mean, you can see from the time frame that it fell through the very
Oh,
end.
that's
It's not
terrible.
an inspection thing, but that's why I tell clients, like, I'm going to need 6 months in case the first deal falls through.
And the other reason to, I guess the other reason to lean toward the 6 months is then you don't have to worry about doing an extension if you need one. So it just makes it easier. All right, paragraph 4 is the broker's fee. So again, part of what I say, whatever you negotiate with them, they're going to ask you right out, what is your fee? And whatever it is, our mantra, remember again, code of ethics, is to treat other people like we want to be treated. So everything's 50-50, as far as your compensation. That, I think that's our thought, policy, whatever it is. I, who have been doing this for years, have never had anyone come as a facilitator. But we still put that offering in there. Some people will put $1 for a facilitator because they don't want to deal with it, but I think they do that because they don't really understand it. The last spot that's there, does everybody understand what that is about the extension?
Yeah.
So they're saying if the property expires and you have brought someone to the property, that they will agree to still pay you a compensation after whatever it is. You could put 10 days, you could put 30 days, whatever it is that you feel like putting.
You should put 30 days.
So back to
Never know,
5.
like 30, 10,
Yeah, yeah.
I think 30 would be fair.
Yeah.
Ever used it. Number 5 talks about the splitting 50-50 of the compensation. So if you're doing 5%, you're going to put 2.5 and 2.5 in there. Number 6, the
Well,
answer.
Is that, you have to do that, or is that, like you said, that's kind of what? I mean, if you did 5, can you go 3 and 2? No.
You can do whatever
You
want.
can do whatever you want. I just wouldn't. I know that one of the exceptions to the rule in general thinking has been new construction. In new construction, the listing agent feels that they spend a lot more time than the buyer agent does. So, I mean, that it isn't, nobody's telling you that you have to do that, but
Have you ever been on the buyer side of a deal where the seller's agent didn't split the commission equally?
Oh, I didn't, a lot of times I don't know until later on. so,
I know,
Yeah,
I know.
You don't know
You
until
don't see the other side until it's
closing or
closed,
something,
right?
sometimes it's.
Because it's
Yeah.
happened to me once, and it's such a bad feeling because you're thinking, I didn't work any less hard than you.
Yeah,
And I know a lot of listing agents say to me, well, I'm paying for photography and I'm paying for all this marketing, so I had higher expenses than you. And it's like, well, I'm paying for gas to take these people out for who knows, 10
Yeah.
weekends in a row.
It's all gonna come around too. It's like
Yeah.
it's like when you sell a house the first time out or the 20th.
Because in New Hampshire, it's pretty much everyone does an uneven split, and it's so disheartening. Like,
I see it, I mean, when it comes to the closing and stuff, when you figure out, I've seen it a lot, that the seller actually is getting more than the buyer agent.
Well, and that could go back to buyer agency too, to ask for that differentiation in your buyer agency contract.
Yeah, I'm with you. Treat people the way you want to be treated, and I'll never forget.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you start out as a buyer's agent, most people do, and,
Yeah.
and I work just as hard, so
Mm.
why wouldn't it be the same?
Number 6, of course, it's MLS PIN for the multiple listing service, which is really a drop in the bucket of all of the things that you're going to do, but you're at least obligating yourself to saying that it will be posted in MLS PIN. I've actually never filled number 7 in, but if you look at the last sentence, it says the designated agent for the seller is. I guess you could put your name in there again. I've never done that, but
What's that?
at the end of number 7, where that line is.
Oh,
Now, I do want to get off on the. Oh, I have to log in again, I guess.
Additional terms.
Yeah.
Realtors.
So we talked about that the other day when
Ah, nice.
we talked about that the other day when Joe was here. And you know, unfortunately, you've got to temper what you're representing. Well, we're not representing the buyer. Forget that whole thing. One of the things that I want to mention that Stacy talks about is whether you're including appliances or not. Now, if you're at a meeting with listing a house and you're going to talk about what appliances are included, the refrigerator is usually the superfluous thing. Your built-ins, your stove and your dishwasher are included. Refrigerator, washer, and dryer are up for grabs. So you have 3 choices: include them, not include them, or say they're negotiable. Stacy's attitude, which I thought was great, and I had never thought about it, is you may be willing to just leave them because you're moving to Arizona and you're being paid by the pound to ship your stuff to Arizona. But don't put that right in there. Keep it between you and the seller and use it as a negotiation term. So if something comes up in the home inspection and they want a $3,000 consideration, say, well, we'll leave you the refrigerator, washer, and dryer. And you see you haven't given it away up front in the listing.
So you don't check off.
Don't check it off right at the beginning,
What
keep it.
happens, what happened, I go back to the house I looked at yesterday, he
Go ahead.
has old appliances in there. He doesn't wanna take them with him. He doesn't wanna get rid of them.
But I would say, don't say refrigerator, washer, and dryer included.
What happens if people don't want
If they're
them?
older.
That's what I'm saying, this,
They're
whoever's
older.
buying
He has
that
to take
probably
them
won't
out?
want them.
Yeah.
You
And
have
that
to
might
pay to
be-
get rid of them?
That might be,
Yeah.
that's why I said, they said they might put it on their contingency that you get rid of the washer, dryer, and
If they're
I
not
mean,
included and they don't put them
refrigerator
in
and
the
stove
offer,
and
you're stuck with them.
microwave.
Yeah.
Well, that's
They're gross.
probably oh.
But not, I mean,
Yeah, that's what I
I
said.
mean, they're just old.
We
They're,
don't
they're
want
like
them.
probably 20 years old, but the stains on them and that won't come off.
If that's a concern about getting rid of them at the end, if the buyer doesn't want them, then maybe.
That's another thing that it's per listing.
Yeah.
On
Because
the
you
other
can see-
hand, you could say that everything's included, and they could write an offer and say, "But we don't want the washer, dryer,
That's-
and
well,
you
that's
have to
what I
get rid of them anyway." You know?
Yeah, he doesn't
So-
want to have to go through the hassle of getting rid of them.
Then
but-
in that case, I'm just saying it's another type of negotiating term that I hadn't thought about, but
So if it's a
You
deal
can do
breaker,
that.
yeah, you gotta get rid of them. You know, I said I got some dumpsters on my houses that I'm doing. I could probably get rid of them for you.
So, another thing to talk about is little things like the dining room chandelier, which was a wedding gift from your parents. And if that's something that you want to take with you, I always tell the people,
Have that.
replace that with a $20 thing from Home Depot before you put it in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't have it in any pictures, just do it. Get it done. There might be other things. Again, if somebody's moving to Arizona, they might not want the snowblower or whatever. Or you could say there are other what other things might there be that,
There's less for everything.
Generators,
what-
whatever.
yeah, I mean, you have to, whoops. New listing. You have to state it correctly in MLS up front. I told you the story last week about the agent that misrepresented the house that I sold, and she misrepresented the washer and dryer, and she ended up giving my clients money
Yeah.
for a washer and dryer at the closing. So if you've made a boo-boo, you could be liable for it at the closing, so be
Mhm.
Is the
careful.
sales disclosure, the sheet that you give them to check everything off, is there a spot on that where you could add that stuff?
About those extra things, here's the sales
Yeah.
disclosure. So yesterday, Ann was saying that she doesn't do them. Some people don't do them. It is a way to get knowledge and understanding.
Yeah, there's
I
really
don't know,
there's
no,
really
I mean,
no-
you can
I'll put it
just,
under additional terms.
yeah,
Like if you know they want
Right here, yeah.
something,
yeah.
Yeah,
like the chandelier, for instance, or
yeah.
the second fridge in the basement. I've had people saying, "I'm taking that."
I just did that in
That's
the,
crazy
and,
about their second freezers.
I would die without mine, honestly.
yeah, and
Never
I
mind.
wrote that in, I
Yeah.
sold a house on Pennock in Chelmsford here, and I wrote that in the offer, because I'm like, it's there, my people will like having that for parties, and the sellers had not included that in the beginning, and they did leave it because I mentioned it, so I was the hero on that one. The other thing in additional terms is whether it's subject to you finding a home.
Right.
Now, I've heard more recently that sometimes people are discounting looking at those houses because they figure if the seller of that home doesn't have a timeline, they're worried about,
They have their own time.
Yeah.
on it.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So back to having that conversation about the B plan, where are you gonna go? So do you wanna put in, subject to seller finding something within 30 days? I've seen people write and they already have a home pinpointed or something like that. But do you put that in or do you not put it in? And if you get an offer, I mean, this is the other script. You've got to get all your scripts memorized. And I say to the seller, by law, I have an obligation to present to you any offer that is written. But I said there's a lot more to an offer than the price. And it could be, what did we just talk about? Letting the kids finish school in June. So it could be about the parameters of the closing date. if two offers come in and they're almost the same price, but one has a better date than the other that fits with what the seller wants, maybe that's what
Yep.
they go for. You know, who knows?
Well, I like their letter.
But I always tell
people
them,
when I swear
yeah,
in
in the
that
letter,
letter.
I always tell them, I said, this is your decision. I'm here to present the offers, but it is your home and your decision to decide what you want to do. Going over I just want to go over this quickly before we end. When you're putting the listing in MLS, just make sure that everything in red is put in there. If it isn't, that's right. If it isn't, when you go to pop it, it's going to caution you on that. The compensation, obviously, the entry only, which of course is usually no. The lender owned, I mean, that's another conversation that you have to have with your person. I tried to list a house in Chelmsford years ago. He didn't tell me till way into the process that it was already in foreclosure or whatever it was. So I mean, unfortunately, you have to have these conversations and ask these questions.
Can we do entry onlys if, like, I have a huge family and I don't want to sell their houses ever, but I know it's going to happen someday. And like when I was on my own, I used to say, I'm not taking anything. And
But that isn't entry only.
So what is that, what is
No,
entry
right.
only?
Entry only
You
is
just put it
people
in
that will
MLS.
put your listing in MLS and do nothing else for you, and they take a very small flat fee
Oh.
for it.
Yeah.
Essentially for sale by owner, but they
Yeah,
want
but
it in
they-
MLS.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And
I
there's,
charge
it
like
says right
$500
on
a
it,
thousand.
contact the seller for anything at all. I'm not responsible.
So,
I
all
don't
right,
think it's
so I
not,
have, I
it's
have
not our
something for
practice to
that.
do that.
I got one of my best friends he has two industrial garages that he just purchased over in Tingsboro. He's gonna be in one of them, and he wanted me to try to find somebody for the other one. And I just kind of asked around first. I asked Dan if he knew anybody, blah, blah, blah. I don't want any money from him. He's my best friend. I don't want nothing from him. I'm just trying to help him out.
Yep.
He's the one that needs to help me out with stuff. But I said, if we can't find anything, I could probably throw it in MLS for you. And
You can do it for no commission.
I
That's
can just do zero.
absolutely,
All right.
absolutely.
I
That's
don't
your
think
right
you
to
could
do.
represent somebody for no commission.
Well, you can put $1.
So it
Yeah.
doesn't, but it won't cost him anything for me. I mean, it won't cost me anything to do it, to enter it, and nothing.
No,
Okay.
no. I mean, I understand that sometimes if you're doing somebody a favor, or if it's a family member, you can do that.
He's done tons
But-
of work for me for nothing. I just.
The
can't
problem
charge
with that, I take it back a little, because you would have to offer compensation to the person that
And I'd tell him that. If,
Rents.
if a buyer agent
say,
came.
I don't care about getting a commission,
actually
but
for
if we
rental.
put it in MLS, you'd have to offer, usually with a rental, it is a flat fee,
Yeah.
so you could offer them $500 or whatever it is.
And what about the broker?
And tenant
Broker
usually pays
LAER
on
doesn't
site,
care.
don't they?
Like if we
The what?
did a
Tenant usually
$1
pays
commission
broker fee.
deal
I just
Yeah,
did a
yeah,
rental
yeah,
and
yeah.
it was paid by she's like, I
because
have
they're
to bring
missing
my-
out on their cut,
Well, in that case, it's a rental.
there's still a broker fee on a rental.
Yeah, but I could
did my
just
first
tell
one and the
Rich,
tenant paid the
I could just
broker
tell
fee.
Rich that
She
you're
paid
gonna
1
pay
month's
the.
rent.
That works in the
broker
Boston
fee
area.
to
It
be
doesn't
split.
work out west.
What
Oh,
you can
really?
do, you're probably right about that. What you could do is put the whole thing in, and when you do the check request, there's a place in the check request that says money back to seller, and you could say that you're reimbursing him your
Oh, okay.
part of the commission.
Really?
That way, whatever commission agreement you have with Stacy is held correctly,
Yeah.
done correctly, and then however it comes out at the end, you take whatever would have been yours and
Give it back to him.
Right. that's how I would do it. Because there's two spots at the bottom of the check request. One says money back to seller and one says money back to buyer.
How does LAER do it if you're listing a property that's your own? Do
I
they
think technically it's once a year you're allowed to sell your own home or something like that. I've done it
Take
once.
Really?
Yeah,
They take a 5% margin
Yeah.
fee, that's what she told me. I
Okay.
don't wanna take a commission.
yeah.
Just 5% of whatever my
But there
side
is there is a consideration for that if it's
Yeah.
your own home. Okay, let's see if there's anything else goofy that we just want to go over. The zip code is important to put in. It is a required field, but remember places like Lowell
multiple.
which has 5 zip codes. So that's important when people are searching that they only want the Belvedere area. The directions, I hate, absolutely hate when you see them say, look at GPS or something like that. I mean, is that
Really, I hate
lazy?
the whole directions field. That's so antiquated, and it shouldn't even be there. Just have a link to Google Maps.
But please don't write that. I mean, just put,
Yeah.
just put off a
I
minute.
write
whatever.
like the exit number off the highway.
I do
and then-
understand what you're saying. Maybe that is outdated,
So,
but it is
especially
a
when
required
you have pin
field.
drop in the top right hand
I
corner of the
know.
listing that says
You're
here's
right.
exactly how to
I
get
You're
to
right.
sometimes just put meaning to whatever, like the couple turns,
The
you know what I
only
mean?
time
Just
it's
to give them
good.
an idea, because if it's in a neighborhood,
Mhm.
like sometimes it's tricky.
Yeah, like condo complexes, or if it's a new development and like
New
the
developments-
road is literally brand new.
Right, and it's not really on Google, so you have to do the street that's adjoining it. This next section is important to mention. When you're putting sub-agency, of course, we don't do. You're going to put buyer agency and facilitator the same. For the most part, it's going to be on lockbox, and for the most part, you're going to say scheduled with showing time, and that there is a sign, unless you get into that argument with the seller. But remember in showing time that you always have to put, we talked about the different exceptions, like if a baby's sleeping or if there's an elderly dog in the kitchen or whatever it was, but you always want to give them the lockbox code or say it's on super or whatever it is so that they can be repeating that. But make it as easy for you as well so that you're not getting repeated calls. Your taxes and your assessment and everything are going to come off a public record and the book and the page. Style, hopefully that'll be an easy one and not like that one. The living area we have talked about in great extent. The appraiser came at it from a little different angle. If it's a split and it's 1,200 and 500 on the lower level, she would like us to put the 1,200 in the red spot. She feels that it's overstating it by putting the 1,700 there. By law, you can do it either way. You could put the 1,700 here and say includes 500 feet of finished area on the lower level, or you could put 1,200 here and put plus 500 on the lower level. And then you're always going to put your source, which public record really gets you off the hook. Now, who may give you the pushback? Your seller. Your seller may say, I want it listed at the 1,700. And that's, you can do that. And, you know, there are pros and cons on the way people are looking. People may look and say, only show me something that's 1,500 square feet or more. So your house would lose out by that.
Yeah.
So
think
I don't have a
splits you
perfect
should include
answer.
though, even though it's technically a basement, it's still your,
Oh, I
a
would
split
go
is a split,
100%.
like you live on both of those
she feels that it
spaces.
skews her as she's doing her job. So
Yeah.
that's her take
But
on
I
it.
don't, maybe in a colonial and stuff, because
But
that
most
basement
splits
isn't
have
always
walkout
finished.
It doesn't,
Right.
walkout does not mean a thing. We asked for that
And I used to
Friday.
think that walkout
Yeah.
meant you could,
Nope,
that goes another full.
Nope. sorry
Because
about
it's below
that.
grade.
Because I've had appraisers tell me they can't count a
Well, some live in
bathroom in a
basement,
basement
some
because the basement wasn't walkout.
So what
And that's why they didn't include the bathroom that was down there.
Not alone.
She told us yesterday walkout
I'm
didn't
just like, you move it.
mean anything. We were talking about splits when she said that, and it did not
Yes.
give them added validity, I guess is what it was. Your lot size, again, is going to come from your public record. Make sure that you know the things to ask the seller for, if they have them, is a plot plan. Going back to, I think it's 1992, I think that was the right thing. We started giving plot plans at the closings. If they have the plot plan, you're going to see right away if there's any. You can do it if you look at the deed too.
Easements or anything.
See if there's any easements or shared driveway. Oh my gosh, is that a pickle to explain to people?
Mhm.
So if there's easements, utility easements, anything like that, you need to disclose that
These new
stuff.
kids just don't get that. I grew up with a shared driveway. It's like so funny how people are like, what? Like, oh yeah.
Waterfront,
Really talk to you, I don't think
beach
about that.
nearby probably isn't going to matter to a lot of people. Be careful about your direction and stuff. That could be a subjective answer. Construction, roof, exterior, those should all be something that you know. Exterior features, include what you feel you know to include. Just don't be wishy-washy about it, if that makes any sense. I think it does. Garage space I find very difficult. I don't mean it so much from putting it in your listing. If somebody says to you, a buyer says, I want a garage, you know yourself, there are 100 different ways to search a garage in MLS. Is it attached? Is it detached? Is it under? Is it above? Whatever. How many spaces is it? So it's very, very difficult. So putting the things here in the required part are important. Then write what you can to know about it. Does it have a garage door opener? Stuff like that. Parking. If you're doing a multifamily in Lowell, it's really important to say whether the parking is on street, off street, or permitted. Road type. Don't mislead people about that either. You may go down I know there's a couple of streets in Dracut that are little dirt streets that have beautiful houses on them. And if I was listing one of those houses, the first question I would ask the seller is, are these approved roads? Are they maintained by the town? You need to know that. They need to know, are they going to get plowing services in the middle of the winter? Heating systems. You have to understand these things as an agent to put it down properly. Cooling. It's required to answer that question, and what are you putting? Now, I had a house recently where they didn't have central air, but they were leaving 5 or 6 wall air conditioners. Yahoo for that, Electrical, make sure you understand how you're stating that about the service for the circuit breakers. Utilities, here's your one story to scare you. Make sure you know specifically if it is town water and sewage. We had, I don't know if it was our company, but the story was told that somebody listed a house in Lowell. She put town water and town sewage. City of Lowell. Why wouldn't you have known that? Are you ready for this? It was the one street in the city of Lowell that did not have town sewage. And she got sued after the closing. Oh yeah, big money. She just did it on presumption and didn't check. So better to check everything. Insulation, and that can be an unknown if you're selling a used house. Unless you ask the question at the listing, have you done any upgrades to the house like adding insulation? Utilities. Again, I would only check off the utility connections for the things that are being included in the listing. If the washer and dryer are not being left, you can say washer hookup, and then you need to know whether it's an electric or a gas dryer. That's another thing. You might have a whole house fan. Laundry chutes. Remind me to ask the home inspector about that tomorrow. Laundry chutes are nowadays, I think, almost against the law.
Yeah.
Because with a laundry chute, that's the way people did it years ago. They had
Fire.
the fire can go straight up from your basement, right up that chase. Remember, I had you tell me that word chase the other day. So that's why they don't like laundry chutes. The one thing I always forget when I'm putting a listing in is to put the number of bedrooms, baths, and total number of rooms. I do all the detailing and then forget to add it up. But as I said to you yesterday, I can only teach you the way I'm comfortable. I think it's really, really important to put what floor things are on, including a finished third floor, which can be really, really nice. I think it's really important to put your dimensions. If somebody has a king-size bed that they're trying to move, they need a large master bedroom. Another thing about that, in the keywords that you can search in MLS, some people might want a first floor master bedroom, and you can search that, which floor is the master bedroom on, things like that. Everything is a drop down, so fill in the things that are proper to fill in. Just be very careful in every single thing that you do that you're not checking off something that is inaccurate. again, my advice, and I talked about this with the house that we looked at on Charm Road the other day. That was a split. The guy had finished 2 rooms in the basement. He says, oh, I had those on as extra bedrooms. I said, nope, I can't do that. But there are a million words over here that you can use for a million things. So I made one a playroom and the other one an office. Call it something else. By saying that, and again, in your written description, the same exact thing, say, there are lots of other rooms that can be used for different things. Nowadays, there are situations where a husband and wife both need home offices. So if you have those extra rooms, and they don't want to share a room when they're doing home office, they want their own
But
space.
what if the 2 rooms in the basement, one of them, or the split, one of them had a closet, technically that can be a bedroom, if they're using it as a
Not if
bedroom.
it's not listed that way in public records.
Right.
If it says
Oh.
3 bedrooms, 2 baths in public records, I'm not writing anything but
Okay.
3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
I don't care if they built the closet
They
into
can
there.
just do that, and it's crazy.
If in fact they did all of their permitting, remember the buyer can go pull that folder at the town hall.
That'll be-
If they did it and had it reassessed for the 4 bedrooms, that would be a different story. But then what complicates that is septic system. If they're already
Yeah.
on town sewer, I mean, around here in the suburban area, we've tried to expand the contracts for the towns every year. I think Billerica, for instance, is probably 75% done. But don't presume that the capacity of your present septic system will even allow another
Yeah.
bedroom.
Yeah.
The Title V law is very strict about that, because you might be Martha and Henry living in the house right now, and you might sell to the Brady Bunch, second marriage, and they each have 3 teenagers. They're going to take half-hour showers each. So that's the protectiveness of the Title V law.
I almost had a deal fall through because the listing agent called a multifamily property a 9-bedroom. Each unit, she said, was 3 beds. They were actually only 2-bedroom units with a room that they made a bedroom, but it
Right.
wasn't a legal bedroom.
Yeah.
And the lender was like, nope, because it was a commercial lender.
Yeah.
And they said, no, we qualified this deal on a 9-bedroom because the rents are
Oh.
severely different between 2-bed and 3-bed.
Yeah.
So the buyer couldn't qualify.
And that was why I asked the question the other day. This was a house that was listed in Billerica by one of our agents, and it was an older home that had, not only did it not have a closet, I don't think, but there was no heat upstairs.
Mm.
And a lot of the older homes, they didn't. They had the grate, and the heat just raised from, and the lender wouldn't even look at it. So you really have to be careful how you're representing it, you know. And look at the word I just came upon, accessory apartment. We talked about that. Be very careful how you're representing that. Lead paint, you're going to answer that by however he has filled it out. Seller's disclosure, you're either going to do it or not do it, depending on what you are doing. If you're doing coming soon, non-MLS, you can put no showings till first open house. Make sure that if you have anything to disclose, no showings after 6 o'clock at night. I mean, you know, not everybody in the world works a 9-to-5 job. There are a lot of people that work the night shifts in hospitals or in other jobs, so they may sleep in the morning and can't do showings till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Make sure if you have an exclusion, that you write that in. You've got to cover your seller's base for whatever it is. The generator may be there outside the garage on a cement pad, but you may write in there, just to be specific, generator excluded, even though it's there at the house. They don't have to leave the generator. It'll be very nice that the wiring is all there and in place. And again, if you're doing all of this work ahead of time, just to do ahead of time, you can just save it, and it's going to be saved offline. It's really nice to be able to work on that. And when you go live, you have to have at least one picture in MLS, and again, in order to keep you out of trouble. Any questions? Was that helpful, I hope?
Yep.
it's good for us all to go over. We've had people rush in the door that say, oh my God, I have to do my first contract and I have no idea what I'm doing. But I think the new streamlining that we've done with Dot Loop is gonna help with that a lot and help make it easier when we get to that point. But remember, as Stephanie asked the question the other day, you can go in Dot Loop and put that stuff in ahead of time and have all of your documents ready. So even as you're doing the staging and the professional pictures, you can have all of those documents getting kind of ready so that when you're ready to pop the listing and have them sign everything,